Welcome back to another episode of Going With The Flow. I'm your host, Lucas Cellino, and today I'm joined with Dylan Yorks, one of our HVAC technicians.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Dylan. So why don't we just start off with a little background? Who is Dylan Yorks?
So I am one of the HVAC service technicians here at Cellino. I have been in HVAC for coming up on 6 years, like 5.5, 6 years. I'm from the Finger Lakes area originally, but I've been in Buffalo for a while now. I came here for college and just stayed after that.
What'd you go to college for?
I have a marketing degree from UB.
Interesting. I'm sure I knew that in the past life, but I've forgotten that. What did you want to be growing up?
I think I was the average sports kid that wanted to be, a football player or something. And then through college, after college, I had a pharmaceutical marketing job. I did a bunch of widely different jobs after college. So I wasn't 100% sure. And then realized that I didn't want to sit at a desk. It just wasn't right for me. And I wanted to go do some good, honest work. And I found my way into HVAC.
Yeah, no, I tell everybody a lot of our best techs come from, went to school, got a degree, had a desk job, and they realize I'm going to sit at this desk every day for the rest of my life. I can't do it. That is where the trades are great, right? You're running, how many service calls do you run a day on average?
Average probably 4 or 5. It can get up to 6 or 7 depending on just how busy the day is or how fast the calls go. If there's a couple quick ones in the morning, then the calls do add up. Sure.
And certainly this time of the year, it's busy season, a lot different than, March, April. That's the one issue with HVAC versus plumbing. Plumbing's a lot more consistent throughout the year as far as workload, where HVAC, you got these spikes, it gets really cold, gets really hot, but in between it's, you get a little bit of a stand up to the busy season, right? A little maintenance, but it's tough once that season ends, and especially after winter. Winter ends, you really can't do AC tune-ups. It's 40 degrees, furnaces aren't going. Workload definitely decreases.
Yes, definitely. Springtime definitely more than fall, but then when the cold weather hits, like what happened the last couple weeks, then it's game on. There's nothing but calls. It gets very busy very quick when the cold weather hits.
Yeah, like a snap, right?
Yep.
So when you started HVAC, how long did it take you to realize this is something that I'd like to do for the rest of my life?
I think the interest was there right away. So I started here at Cellino as an install apprentice. When you're an apprentice, it can start kind of slow. You do sample some plumbing calls. I knew that HVAC kind of piqued my interest a little bit more so than the plumbing side. But it does happen pretty quick. And then as you grow and get the hang of things and you get better at stuff, then it does make you realize I like doing this and I can see myself doing this for a full career. Well,
when we interviewed you first, and this is going back probably 6 years ago now.
Yep.
I knew right away it would be a great application for you. You worked on race cars, right?
Yes.
So real involved. So, anytime you get somebody that's, sharp, smart, you can just tell right when you meet you, and customers love you. You can tell he's just, honest, ethical, caring, but, you also have that mechanical background, and that's the perfect mix for this industry.
Yeah. And I think that's what I was kind of missing in previous jobs too. Just sitting at a desk, making phone calls. It just, I felt like I needed to go do something with my hands and help the people in front of me. I think that's the biggest thing that I like about the job is that you are helping people that need you. When your furnace is down and it's 10 degrees outside, you do need somebody reliable to come help you. And being that person just makes you feel good about what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you quickly hit on it, but apprentice kind of starts slow. I think that's one of the hardest jobs. Really underrated because it is slower and you got to almost think ahead. You don't know what's going on.
Yep.
Why don't you just bring me through what it was like being an apprentice and how long did that really last until you really got the groove of things?
So being an apprentice is definitely, one of the harder spots. A lot of them come in not having experience. So you don't necessarily know anything. It does help if you know how to use tools or if you do have somewhat of a mechanical background, but it can start it feels like it starts slow, but they're also just throwing a million things at you at once. Are you helping a plumber on this one day? Are you doing an HVAC install the next day? Typically, our our install teams are teams of 2 with 1 lead and 1 apprentice for the most part. So you do have to try to be as reliable as you can and be as helpful as you can. And that can be difficult when you have no experience. But having a good lead, I think, is the best way that we can help you. Having them show you certain things that you can handle day one, like whether it's running part of the gas line to the furnace or, teaching you the electrical so that from then forward you can do the electrical and be a helpful apprentice. That helps your lead, but also helps you grow as a technician.
Yeah. I know when I was a tech at one point, when I first had a couple of apprentices with me, I would feel like I'd spend a lot more time trying to teach when it was somebody that I knew was going back and kind of studying and actually cared about it. And, once you see somebody else giving effort, it's a lot easier to kind of push that forward.
Yes, definitely. And committing to, as an apprentice, you do need to commit to learning this, study things at home or, just to help your lead and be as helpful as you can be. You do have to have that desire to learn. You do have to want to do this.
Yeah, certainly. So why don't you bring me through what a normal day? I guess normal day is different depending on the season. Let's go through a normal day in winter. What does that look like for you?
Normal day is, again, typically 4 or 5 service calls. I guess a normal day is tough because every call is different. There are no 2 calls that seem the same, but typically we try to get to our first call around 8 a.m., sometimes earlier if the customer allows it. And diagnose what's wrong, whether it's something we have on our vans or running to a supply shop. But a typical day is running service calls, figuring out what's wrong, going through options with the homeowner and just see what fits or what solution is the best for them.
How often would you say that you have the parts on your truck to resolve that job right then and there?
It definitely depends on what's going on, but a lot of the simpler or smaller parts, which does seem to be the issue a lot of the times, we do carry on our vans, whether it's igniters, pressure switches, boiler parts. We do carry a lot of boiler parts because they're fairly generic. On furnaces, some of the bigger motors, inducer motors are mostly different furnace to furnace. Blower motors are different. Control boards are all different. So we can't carry stuff like that on our van, but we do come as prepared as we can with a lot of the parts that can be universal or, can get the customer by if we need to order something.
Well, I know they do have universal blower motors or control boards, and I'll bring them up and you guys give me all the pushback. And, I come from a plumbing background. I don't have that HVAC background, and I've learned it's a lot better just to trust you guys. You guys are the ones going out there doing it. For me, the efficiencies, universal seems to make sense, but I can certainly understand not want to go and stock the trucks with those and get the right parts.
Yeah, and in today's world with all of the higher end furnaces from Train or Carrier, there's 2-stage variable speed that a universal control board might not work for. So universal parts, when it comes to stuff like that, can be more difficult than just going and getting the correct part for that furnace.
What is, give me 2 different jobs. So what is a job that when you get dispatched to it, what is one that you're excited to go to? And one is one that you're like, oh, I got to go to this. Not one of these.
It's a tough question. I do like boiler calls. So there are, boiler calls that you do get excited for. But
I never hear this.
Boiler calls can be tough at the same time. When you hear, I have a boiler leaking or a radiator leaking, those jobs, they can be expensive for the homeowner, but they can also be difficult. Are you cutting out a bunch of the manifolds to the supply and return? What's leaking? There is a huge variable of, is that something easy to repair or is it something more difficult? Getting the air out of a boiler system, what we call purging, is different for every job. Not every boiler is set up for just to do that from the basement and make it nice and easy. Sometimes you are going through a big 3-story Buffalo house to every single radiator and bleeding them from the small bleeder key. So I guess those are my favorite and least favorite calls. they can be fun. They can keep you engaged in what you're doing, but they can take a while. And if they are black iron pipes that have been put together for 150 years, they are not easy to take apart.
Yeah. No, that's when we first got into HVAC, I ran a couple of the emergency calls, and I remember I went to 800 Westbury one time trying to bleed out that system. You need a special key, the vent. I've never seen anything like it. And Buffalo's an old housing stock. So you get to these old buildings in the city. Sometimes it's different. You'll find something new that, was manufactured somewhere around here, and they're just not that common.
Yep. I was just in one of the old 3-story Buffalo houses in the city and had to drain the entire system out to be able to change the pump. And I had a radiator open. I was timing it. It was almost 45 minutes before I got before I got water to the 3rd floor, and consistently through, I think, just purging the job took me more than 2 hours throughout the whole house. It's just big 3-inch cast iron pipes. It is normal. It just takes time. Yeah.
No, you got to be patient. You got to be persistent. You got to be confident in what you're doing. You don't want to be sitting there 45 minutes and not know if it's working. So certainly experience, especially in Buffalo on these old homes, goes a long way.
Yes.
What is there a job that you could think of that like a hard diagnostic job, something that kind of threw you for a loop, or maybe threw another tech for a loop? And I know, when you came in, you said, I got to put my phone away. All the techs will be calling. I know you guys all communicate on different things you find.
Yep. We do bounce ideas off of each other, because there are calls that make you second guess what what you think is wrong. So talking it over with another person and making sure that you've gone through everything that they would go through does help you, gives you a little more confidence in what you're diagnosing, but also just second set of eyes is always good. One call does come to mind that happened a couple months ago. I was at a big house in East Amherst that had 3 furnace and ACs and a high efficiency boiler system with, I believe it was 12 zones for radiant floor.
Holy cow.
And as I was going through, nothing was working. None of the systems were working. So that kind of throws a red flag right off the bat.
Gas issue.
That's where my brain went initially, and it was not. Furnace 1 just needed a cleaning, but furnace 2 needed a control board. The high efficiency boiler that was brand new needed 2 control boards. And then as I was in the attic, furnace 3 needed a control board. And I was in the attic kind of panicking, like, this guy's going to think I'm crazy that out of 4 systems, he needs 4 control boards. It's tough news. If you
didn't tell me that this was resolved, I would have thought you were crazy. And I don't really know much about it. I just know that control boards aren't generally where you start.
Right.
But it does seem like those have gotten worse and worse over the years, right? Like,
it does seem like there's a lot of low voltage issues, or, it just, as furnaces do get, a little bit more involved and a little higher efficient, sometimes there's a lot more going on with the board. But in that one in particular, I sat in the attic for a couple minutes, just nervous about having to go have this conversation that just magically all at once, all these control boards went. As I came down from the attic, the homeowner, and this was after hours of diagnosing, the homeowner said, "Hey, a couple weeks ago, the house got struck by lightning really bad. Yeah. And do you think that could have anything to do with this?" And then I was a little bit more relieved. Obviously it's still not good news,
exactly, but what happened.
Yep. Because he had multiple, I think he said he had 8 TVs throughout the house all burn out at night. It was loud enough to where it woke him up. So, I guess it would have been helpful information at the beginning, but it did at least relieve a little bit of the pressure, knowing that there was a reasonable explanation for all of that happening at once.
Yeah. Now, I mean, there's certainly things that he could do at his house. Now, bringing on electrical, we have services that can help prevent that, which I think, pretty much everybody in HVAC was pushing us to get into electrical for that reason. They just tie together so much, especially with New York State. They took a pause on it now, but trying to go to all electric. Do you see a big advantage with having electric, or is there a time that you call them or utilize them?
Definitely. I mean, we definitely work hand in hand. There's a lot that goes on where we need each other, and even fresh, when we first started the electrical division, it worked out perfectly for me. I had a call that I was having a weird issue with power. I will open up breaker panels. It's not my favorite part of the job. And I called Tyler Lane, our electrical manager, and he came out, and it was probably the best call I've ever made. He opened up the panel, pulled the AC breaker out, and like 8 breakers fell to pieces right in front of us. Just plastic. It was all burned and melted. And, that may not have been something that I would have noticed or, just ripped out like that. And so having him there, I can turn it over to him and say like, hey, the AC seems fine. It's focused on an electrical issue. And then when Tyler's done, we can come back and take a look at the air conditioning as well.
Yeah, no, it's like anytime we bring on something like that and you go through a story or, some sort of situation like that, it's like, how do we get by without having that?
Yes.
And it's like electricians just don't exist. It's impossible to call somebody up and ask for help these days. We were lucky to have a couple small contractors that would certainly help us out, but it's not like having somebody on the team that can come over and help.
Yep. And that one, it just worked out so well because Tyler was less than 10 minutes away and he was finishing up a call. Like it just worked out perfectly to where we had, somebody close by that helped perfectly. Before the electrical division was here, if I had pulled that breaker out and they all fell to pieces, it's going to be a tough conversation to have with the homeowner that, we should probably shut the main power off and get somebody out here because it's obviously a big fire hazard. Yeah.
And, there might be any preventive maintenance on kind of avoiding that situation. Do you know what caused that? Was that another electrical strike?
That one, I don't know. I believe there was an electrical fire at that house, if I remember correctly. It was in a separate part of the house. I don't know if that maybe routed back to the board or the panel, or if the panel maybe caused that issue. That one I'm not sure of, but I believe having, electrician come do routine check on stuff like that could probably help that be avoided.
So as we're, just starting winter off here, what are some tips or tricks for homeowners to prevent, having an issue at their house, their heating going out?
As the snow comes, making sure you're venting. If you have a high efficiency furnace, making sure that is clear is a huge one. Even if the snow is not piled up over the PVC, make sure you actually look into the pipes. Sometimes if it's just sitting just right, or if water is coming in just the wrong way, it can actually build up ice and block those pipes enough to shut the furnace down. So that would be a big one. Changing the filters is obviously that's the obvious answer, but we still run into it a lot where people aren't routinely checking filters. And if you overheat your furnace, it's going to lock itself out in an error code and you're not going to have heat. So making sure that there is proper airflow, vents aren't blocked, filters are clean and changed. I think that's the biggest thing homeowners can do to try to prevent breakdowns.
Yeah, and you got, changing the batteries and the thermostats for those that aren't powered. How often do you go to a call? I get asked this, like, how often do you have to go to a call where it's just they didn't change out the batteries?
It does happen. I haven't had any recently, but the other thing you can do is, even if it's not giving you the low battery sign, change them, but also make sure it's not corroded. Thermostat batteries typically last a long time, but that does mean that the batteries can start to corrode because they're old. And that can ruin your thermostat, which will obviously shut the system down.
Yeah, like in the remote of the TV, you don't use all the time,
Yep, and when you pull them out, they're all corroded on the terminal. So just keep an eye out for that, or just routinely change them, even if they are not low, just to prevent that.
So what do you think about, I see people covering their condensers. How do you feel about that?
I have always been against a full cover, especially like tarps. They do seal in moisture for the winter, which is obviously bad for metal. I think that also makes a really nice winter home for mice and critters to get in, and they chew electrical. In the spring, that's one of our most common calls, is that something got into the condenser, chewed the wires, shorted out some of the electrical in there. What I do recommend is putting a piece of plywood on top of covering the fan of the condenser, and then just a couple bricks to keep it there in place, and make sure you take it off before air conditioning season.
So that's the key. That's why I've been against it. So I'll drive around and I'll see people with the covers on as it's starting to get warm, and I'll go in their yard and I'll remove it. Yep. I've had the cops call on me before for going in somebody's yard to do that. So I don't suggest it, but
I have run into it before. Just the condensers out there screaming loud because it can't move any air. So
yeah, it sucks dry, and you'll ruin your condenser if you leave it covered and forget to pull it off.
Yes. Yep. You can break the whole AC system doing that. So be careful if you are going to cover it. I will always recommend against tarps, but if you wanted to put a piece of wood over the top just to keep the snow out from the inside, it's not a bad
certainly
idea.
Makes a lot of sense. Oh, great. So Dylan, what's next for HVAC or Cellino Plumbing and Dylan Yorks himself?
For me, I think it's just helping the team grow. I do get a lot of phone calls from the other techs, just, for help with diagnostics, just because I am one of the more experienced techs that we have. I think just helping the team get better, helping everyone else around me grow as technicians, will just help the whole department, which obviously helps all of us. So
I'll say this, we've had techs, 20 plus years, 15 plus years experience. And I often say the time does make a difference, but there's certainly people that'll have, 4 years experience that know more than people with 30 years. And so time is a variable for sure, but it's not everything. And like somebody like you, you've come in and you've been the team lead. You're pretty much here from, right after the inception of HVAC. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we were doing heating and cooling for more than a year without you.
I think it was pretty close to around there.
Yeah. So, you've kind of taken it and helped us get to the next level here. So we certainly thank you at Cellino. And I know the team loves you. You're a fan favorite, not only of the coworkers, but also customers as well. So Dylan, thanks for joining us. Is there anything I missed or anything else that you want to elaborate on?
I don't think so.
No? I think, do we ever hit on what job you didn't want to do? The worst call that you get?
I don't like snakes, and the condensers where, you can kind of smell it, unfortunately, where you're walking up to them. There is a smell of dead animal, and having to clear out snakes of condensers that have shorted out. I guess that would be my least favorite thing. Furnace season, it is common to get birds in the chimneys. Just not my favorite. They're dead animals. Unfortunately, it is part of the job, but I'd say that's probably my least favorite one. And where you open up that vent and then you have to take care of a dead bird or something in the chimney. Yeah, I've done my fair share of that, and I'm an animal lover too, so it's tough. It's tough, yeah. And the smell's not great either. No. You can usually walk up to it and know what's going on. Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, Dylan, thanks again for joining us. Thanks again for everything you do for Team Cellino. And again, if you need heating, cooling service, certainly reach out and ask for Dylan. Thanks for having me.